So the first story we're going to listen to today is about the importance of the employee value proposition. And please join me in welcoming on stage, first of all, Robert Scheck and Natalie Mellin from King. And Claudia Tatanelli from Universum. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marina, and thank you so much, LinkedIn, for having us. I have the pleasure of starting our session. I have amazing colleagues on stage, and our job today and our goal today is really to discuss me opening up the topic of how organizations tackle talent attraction and the obstacles that stand in their way. And my first part, and I will be super brief because we're running a little late, is really to talk about EVP and frame it a little. Do a turbocharged 9 steps on how to build one, and I'll leave it to the experts that have executed impeccably. So you will see in a fun, innovative, progressive, amazing way. So not going back. If you can help me go back to the first one. Yeah. About Universum, in case you don't know, but very quickly, is that we have been conducting research. So we're known for research and insights, providing those to many organizations. We survey over 52 countries now, I'm proud to say. My title, besides the one I have, is also Chief Expansion Officer. I'm always adding new countries. We added Africa this year and a lot of Southeast Asia, looking into adding even more. And we conduct research. We survey millennials, Gen Z, Gen Xers, and so on, all on their goals and what they're looking for in employers, and have a lot of that, do a lot of internal also assessments. And with that research as well, and of course, rank the companies, the top employers, many of you know, but we also do a lot of analysis and strategy around it. So a lot of this insight provides us with a lot of knowledge on what's attractive. But then, of course, when building an EVP, and you'll hear it more, it's also about what's internally also attractive and what is true and real and authentic. And that's what so it's skipping, we're looking at. And final but not least, it's the communication part, which is absolutely vital. One thing is to define your employer value proposition and who you are and who you want to be and what you want to say, but then you have to say it. And we've noticed that if we're looking at the top employers out there, no matter what country, and we're talking about 52, it's always those firms who are doing both things very well, defining their EVP and then communicating it very, very well. Again, today you'll hear from some of the best. So what we also do is that we do research, not just on graduates and Gen Zs now and professionals out there, but also on companies. And what are their challenges, what are they working on? And one great study we just did this year, many of you probably didn't see it, is we surveyed over 2,000 organizations, the top ones across the globe, but assume they're bigger ones, but also very strong national ones, and asked them, so who owns it? Who owns employer branding now? Who's working on it? And really what we noticed is that, and who's accountable? Nowhere is the challenge of employer branding more evident than in how different roles within the organizations view the ownership of it. I'll show you why. When we asked CEOs, because we surveyed CEOs, marketing, and HR on this question, who's accountable? It was interesting to see, and very stunned, that CEOs, most of them, actually thought, 60% of them, that they are accountable for it. So employer branding sits within them. And they thought that only 32% was really the responsibility of HR. Now, when asked, and let's see if I do this right, HR, they actually, 58%, think they do. And probably a lot of it in this room assumes the same. But only 26% for them is also part of the CEO. We asked marketing. I don't know what this is. Oh, you don't see it. We asked marketing the same question, and they felt that 50-50 was split between the two. So clearly, there's not an alignment. Everyone thinks they own it. And when that happens, as we know, no one really does. So the only thing, and it was 30 different questions we can definitely share with you if you wish, the only thing they all agreed on is more cooperation is definitely needed. So 57%, as you see here, are confident, however, as well, that greater cooperation can be achieved. It's just that they're not talking. Especially, and I think you'll all see, marketing is still not talking much with employer branding. And since you're using a lot of channels, but primarily LinkedIn, you're both needing to work on it. And cooperation is absolutely necessary. So we see that. And when we ask their employer branding objectives and ask them, so what's the goal of this? Why is the CEO doing it? What do they think? And what are HR and marketing? Most of them, we asked two questions. at the beginning and today and in 5 years? Are the goals different? So I don't know if you get to see them. We can't see them on the screen, so I'll read them with you. Oops, something's happening here. Can you go back? Great. Today, as you see, to fulfill our short-term recruitment needs is the number one. But if you look in 5 years instead, it's really to secure their long-term recruitment needs. So really, really quite different, but it is strategic, and the goal is that. The other interesting part, if you see, so dark blue is 5 years from now, and today is the light blue, is to differentiate ourselves from our competitors is going to become more and more important. I see it with a lot of you, but that's really, really key when building an EVP, finding that differentiates yourself. And finally, it's 31%, so second in 5 years, will be that of build an employer brand on a global level. So if we continue to the next slide, these are the 9 steps. Everyone always asks me, so, how do I start? Where do I start? Even before the EVP, what should you consider? And I really, really do, and I know you're all doing it, but maybe not in all the phases. In a perfect world, if you were to start, we'd say, first, make sure to define your needs and wants. And maybe not just at the beginning of a process like this, but every year. Just ask yourselves, what do we need? We're all changing, and organizations are, for sure, transforming. And so this is a very important process that we notice it doesn't always occur. So once you know what you need and you want, and this at a global level, and then regional, and then local, and by function, then really locate it. We know that traditionally we would go to geographies, and of course they were very much determined by that. But nowadays there are global talent pools such as LinkedIn, which is now, I think, 3rd or 4th largest population out there. It's not a geography, but it's still where the majority of people are. And so that's, of course, means that you locate it in a very different way. And that's, again, super cool, super key. And then third, understand your target group. It's a lot of the data we have, but that you can see out there. What do they want? What's attractive? It's important to know, of course, who you are, but also it needs to appeal to the audiences, both externally, but also for retention purposes. So when I talk about employer brand, I mean internal one just as much. I think it's as crucial as anything. As you know, your internal employees are your best ambassadors, and we have plenty of data to prove that. So understanding it is key, and then analyzing also who's out there. Who are you competing with talent? We know clearly that when it comes to talent, consumer brands, that's not just your direct competitor. It's everyone. Everyone wants IT, especially top talent in IT. Everyone needs marketing. And so really, once you define your needs and wants and you know where they are, you also need to understand who am I competing there and that, and also uncovering what's different that you can offer and not. And then, of course, understanding what are they currently thinking of us. I mean, you do have an employer brand. You may not control it, but you do have it. What you don't have, however, is an employer value proposition. That's really when you appropriate yourself of that employer brand and you really define what it is that you want to be known for. And that's really what we mean. And again, today you'll see an excellent, excellent best practice. Finally, and not least, as I said, without talking about it, you might as well just have not done. Actually, this process of building it and identifying it is quite time-consuming, very political in some organizations, very long and lengthy. It doesn't have to be, but seems to have been. If you then don't go out and talk about it internally and externally simultaneously, I'd say, and also cooperate with corporate comms and identify all the touch points in which this EVP needs to live, this is a very tough exercise that really serves no purpose unless you go out. So communicating it effectively, building a strategy before you build the channels and the content, which seems obvious, but not always happens because some of the times you come in and a lot of material is there, so you need to integrate it. We'll again look at some incredible best practices from them. Then test and validate is important because if not, you don't know if it worked. So identifying and monitoring your key performing indicators and also the return of investment is absolutely key. If not, management and all those people you've involved in this won't know did it work, did it not. Whoa. So I woke you up, last but not least. Once you've done that, once you've uncovered what your global umbrella proposition is, EVP, unique essence, brand essence, people identity, let's call it whatever, but ultimately, what are those values that you want to be known for as an employer and that differentiate yourself from your consumer one? And that is unique and global. We hear this a lot. Oh, should I have a regional one and a local one? I mean, I have personally probably seen over 50 EVPs, our company even more. And even when talking to all of you and many of you in this room that I know, who you are, your unique essence doesn't change just because you're in another country. What changes, and this is where the magic, the magic recipe is, the message platform. Of course, when you're in China or in Brazil, and I'm talking about, the emerging markets or Russia, but even within Europe in the different countries, how you communicate it, the messages that you choose to use rather than others to still describe that one unique essence or brand and EVP, that must change by region, by global, by division, by experience with professionals versus Gen Z. We hear all about them. So, and again, that's really crucial. And then, once again, and that's the blue, there must be a consistent look and feel. If you dilute it there with a lot of different creative that may speak very much and be localized and EVP, it is almost as if it was different. So these are the key success. We've seen them through that really, really work. And today, I think, again, and it's a real pleasure to introduce you. You will hear from some real great colleagues on the stage that have done it, rocked it, and really, really, really made it a lot of fun. So one last that I can part is lessons learned in building. We noticed that, and this is very key, management involvement is key. Without the top management that agrees and understands the importance and then helps you drive it through, it becomes an incredibly difficult political process, and it stays there. Then message must be authentic, differentiating, and credible, but also visionary and attractive. But the most important thing is that it's authentic, that you're not promising what isn't true. Of course, visionary is also key, meaning it may not be who you are now, but that you will be in the future. But still, that it does resonate with your current employees is essential, because if you want them to be ambassador of this new EVP, they must feel that it's not, up there and only true to the managers, but really, really felt. Define your strategy before your content. You heard me say it, that's even part of the steps. Easily said than done. Localize and adapt the communication of it, not the EVP. Cooperation between marketing, HR, communications is crucial. We see that this is now the newest challenge, that sometimes because especially on LinkedIn and other social media outlets as well as others, you're both going. There's a lot of also TV advertisement and branding. If you're not talking early on, and if you don't engage them when you're putting this together and ask them to really be part of it, we find that they can be your biggest roadblock. I'm sure you'll agree. And so bring them on earlier. We found that to be helpful. And always maintain a consistent look and feel. So I think the key KPIs, I think I've said it many, many times, make sure you measure before and after, and I promise you, if done correctly, you will see how this impacts, and you'll be able to also show them what your work was worth, as well as how this impacted not just the one thing, which is engagement and attraction, but a lot of other things we've seen, satisfaction, performance, and many others I don't have time here to share, but there are many, many. And so, without any further ado, I'm going to pass it along to the super fun part of this presentation, and I'm super proud to be on stage with you guys.
I don't know about you guys, but it feels like we're competing for talent because of the sound from all the other stages, but hopefully you can hear what we're saying.
Is it possible to get the slides over here? It's stopped working. Thanks.
All right. Do you want to start?
I can start. I've been at King 2.5 years. Prior to King, I worked in a very big energy company. For employer branding, I have a motto, and it's delivering what you promise. And I'm going to come back to that later on in the presentation.
And I also work at King with employer branding with Robert. I also have to have a motto now. So enabling your employees and supporting them, I think that's key when I work with employer branding.
So to put it into a context where we're from, did you actually know that the gaming industry now overtakes the movie industry in terms of turnover? Did you also know that every 10th person on the planet has played a Swedish game? So similar to H&M and IKEA, we're everywhere.
But a little bit more about us. So hopefully you know Candy Crush. But what you might not know is that we started out in Sweden back in 2003. But today we developed over 200 games for Facebook, mobile, and what am I forgetting? Web. That's important as well. we have a network that last quarter was the same amount as the US and Canada's population combined. It's a huge network of players that we have. We've also grown our offices since 2003, so we now have offices in 13 offices in 11 countries. And we are probably here today because we're some proud winners of a few employer branding trophies.
But it was a different saga back in 2013 when I joined. We didn't have any employer brand team, we didn't have an employer value proposition, and I think we didn't actually have an HR strategy back then. But we had some clear objectives, and it was to scale the organization. We need to recruit the best people and also engage the people that was already working there. And I think the challenges that I saw was really that the corporate brand was so unknown for everyone. Everyone knew about the products and the games, but no one was, who is this company that has launched these products, and also how is it work there? And Candy Crush was hitting big back then, and that also moved us into a hyper-growth phase. And also, we had very tough competition for developers and tech and IT competence. So that was some of the challenges that we saw.
So how are we going to solve that?
We're going to solve that with understanding who we are, what makes us special, and also how do we differentiate ourselves towards our competitors.
That's, as it says, the simple one. I think what was key is that we needed to unlock management support. We needed to find the business relevance, so align ourselves to the strategy. And we needed to speak the same language as our leadership and our founders to show them our why and get them to understand what is this all about and how is this going to solve those problems that we were talking about.
I think also back then, management was kind of unclear what was coming out of the whole employer branding and employer value proposition. So speaking the same lingo was important.
Yes. We got a green light, and we chose our agency, got to work. And you can see that we put in a couple of hours to do this work. One of my favorite things, though, is that we actually had an undercover operation happening. It felt very MI6, MI5, MI6. I'm not from the UK, so I'm not really sure which one's the right one. Another thing, I think, which has been very helpful and why it's been so successful is that we got 2 full days with the leadership team.
So we analyzed all the data, and out came these 5 core messages. And these 5 core messages are very similar to our values, good or bad. I think it's just positive, especially when you integrate the EVP into already existing processes internally, so it feels very natural. And we use them almost like a music equalizer. So here you can tweak things depending on what target audience that you're trying to attract, but also on what markets, etc. So the thing between global and local are really important here. And but the 5 messages needs to come down to 1 message. So we're trying to narrow it down. So this is the essence of the EVP. And I think some people ask us if it's possible to have a global message. And Claudia was talking about it earlier, and I think it's the same thing. It shows that there are more actually similarities than differences, and it's just important how you tweak it and be flexible and adapt it.
But we don't really want to go out communicating this. We needed a communication concept, a tool that we could actually use. So in one of these workshops that we had with the leadership and the founders, we got inspired directly about what Ricardo, our CEO, said. So without further ado, we got to present this for you. So let me present our EVP concept, seriously playful. What's important with this is that this is us. This is really how we act, what we feel like. It's how we put words on who we are and what makes us special. And I think why it's been so successful, because even though that looks like a typical strapline, this isn't just a strapline. This is an ethos. This is really our culture and everything that we believe in.
Okay, I'm off here. It also brings it to life.
We're a tech company. We're having. This is like the same thing in the office.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
So it's tone of voice, it's artwork, it's everything. So we have like an employer value proposition toolkit that explains Seriously Playful, both internally and when we work with external agencies.
Yeah.
When you have done all the development and you're there and you need to implement the EVP, we use employee and community lifecycle. So map what you're doing in all of these phases in the lifecycle, and then link it to the business strategy. What is important for us at the moment? For us, it was really at King, the attract and recruit phase that was critical. So we needed to focus and prioritize that from the beginning. So what did we do then? We did a lot of different things with Attract, such as career site and campus-related things, but we also helped the recruiters to rewrite all their job descriptions. We added diversity statements. We did relocations guides that had the whole Seriously Playful tonality. So one example could be where to find the best currywurst in Berlin if you're going to move there to our studio. Onboarding was also something that we integrated EVP into. One example from that was, I remember when I started and I sat through my first CEO call and I couldn't understand almost anything because it was so many abbreviations. So I created an A to Z dictionary in how to speak Kinglish. And that we use now for our new starters, so hopefully they understand a little bit more than I did my first CEO call.
So remember, we talked about that this is really important to kind of align yourselves to the business strategy. And during this time, we're in hypergrowth. We're still in hypergrowth. We're recruiting. So under Motivate, the key thing that we had as a priority was helping the Comp and Ben's team. So how are we going to communicate our benefits package? So we created benefit sheets to start off with, a quick win, but then also moving into an online platform where you can go in as an employee and pick your personalized benefit package. This is also at the time around our IPO. You probably heard about our beautiful IPO last year. So we wanted to look at go even further. It's not, we can't forget the boring documents. So working with our legal team and the leadership team, we looked at everything that had with RSUs, IPO, everything that was going out to our candidates that might be getting an offer from us, as well as current employees.
Regarding exit, we haven't really been, we're in the beginning of the saga here. We still have low attrition, so we're now focusing more on creating a network so our alumni can still get in touch with each other, but I think it's just the beginning.
All right.
And implementing an EVP, for me, it's not only about the processes and the tools and the life cycle you saw, it's really about the culture. And I think I've never worked in a company where culture and values are so much discussed and talked about as in King. And I think that has really helped us with integration of the EVP. One example is regarding trusting your employees and having a voice heard is when we changed our travel and expense policy after our employees said that this is not living according to our values. So I think that is just one example.
Another thing which Claudia also mentioned is working together with others. It's not just a one-man or a two-man show, man and woman show. It's about working with the business. And we really focused on working with PR, brand, and marketing. And the nice part here is that we share our social media channels, so all the King channels is shared between the three teams of us. And we can also tell you today that Seriously Playful, our communication concept, has now been chosen as the overall brand proposition for the whole of King.
That's not often that
No.
HR is leading the competition work.
I think I was banging on about that for like 2 years in my previous role. It never happened. When you kind of built it and you started integrating, you also need to track and see how it's doing, right? You need to maintain it. So to secure our EVP, we do a number of things. But just to mention a few, we recruit, we have a values-driven recruitment process. That means 6 interviews against the values for every single candidate. But it also means that they get to meet 6 people in the business, and it's a two-way streak. We need to get to know the candidate, and the candidate needs to know us. We all know that it costs enormous amount to recruit people, and it can be very dangerous if you hire the wrong person. So when we went into this hypergrowth phase, we had to interview, train the whole organization. Another thing that I want to mention is that in our performance management process, we also use our values and our EVP to kind of check how we're doing and how the candidates are doing. And I think that's it. A lot of people think that you have to spend the big bucks. And yes, of course, you can do fancy and nice things when you do. But use your existing processes. Use employee engagement surveys. Add a few questions in there to see how you're actually living up to the work you've done.
Create your own EVP index. I think also use marketing. Normally they have brand tracker index and how well the company, the awareness rates about the company. That we have also used before when you don't have big budgets. Go out and look for other departments if you can use something from their side as well. So now we have shown you a little bit of how we developed the EVP, how we have integrated it in a life cycle, but we want to showcase some examples as well. And I think we took the adverts and made it into a seriously playful way by taking real photos and mixing up with our characters. And we also made a unified look and feel over all adverts that went out. Even campus has it. It lays under the seriously playful umbrella. Career site, we closed down. We had a lot of different microsites, campaign sites back in the days. So we closed down over 10 sites and moved them and migrated them over to a brand new career site. Last year we had 56,000 applications. So it's a very important source.
And this is really important when we talked about global versus local. So having all these different websites, but not having them come together, that was not working for us. So this was our way of making sure that we kept it consistent. It was one global king, but we still added local touches. So actually, if you come into our website, you will see a different display depending on which country you're actually coming in from. So this is Stockholm, but you guys, if you go onto it now, you will see a background of London.
We have talked a lot about values. We tweaked the values a little bit when we analyzed and did the same around the EVP project. We relaunched them in a global comms with a values animation internally for our employees, and also we made a board game. We love games at King. So we did a board game how the teams could kickstart their value work with actually starting to discuss behaviors behind the values. So not only having them as office signs.
Social. So this is actually one of the areas where we struggled a little bit. We're great on the marketing side when it comes to social media. But bringing our EVP to life on social media channels and having a quiet period around the IPO actually proved a little bit of a difficulty for us. But we managed to get there. We relaunched it in April last year. And within that first year to December that year, we grew our follower base, for instance, on LinkedIn with over 130% or so. So we have done a lot, but we're continuing our story here. This is definitely a focus point. And the key thing here around sort of how you are using your message to communicate your story. Here is one of those things where we have to focus on not being just playful. We have to be a little bit serious as well. So that's one of our focuses moving forward. Diversity and inclusion, we hadn't really been very strategic here before, but as you probably all know, it's a huge thing, specifically in the gaming industry with Gamergate last year. So when I came in, we decided that we were going to focus on a few things. For instance, we've now participated in 5 different Pride parades across Europe. And we've also specially designed some of the smaller stuff for the offices. So our toilet signs are specifically designed to remove any stereotypes, as well as we have a foosball table that you can see here, where we have art department has designed these players to make them look non-stereotypically white and male.
Referrals are a really important source for us when it comes to recruitment. And last year, 37% of all new hires came from referrals. And our employees also get a gratification. But for us, it was really important to do a campaign internally that felt seriously playful. So we did a copy-led campaign, and was amazing feedback from our employees. And we were nominated for Best Use of Copy at the CRPD Awards for that.
It's my fave.
Yeah, humble bragging. We actually won an award for Best Use of Copy in the Life at King handbook. And I wanted to wait because we had our team we had a mission or a task to create the handbook, but I wanted to wait until the EVP was finalized to actually change the whole handbook into that seriously playful look and feel. So we waited until the EVP was ready, and then we did the handbook. And it has everything that you need to know as a new Kingster, but also more experienced people read it.
So we're getting signs that we're running over, so we'll flick through these quite quickly. We obviously have to have our own gamified app. We wouldn't be a gaming company without it. There's one thing I wanted to show you, though. We're 2 years in. We've tripled in amount of employees in the last 2 years, tripled. We've also brought our EVP to life. And one of the things that Claudia mentioned before is how do you find that global essence, but also allowing for local adaptations. This is our journey. And as you can see, it's very consistent. But there's a number of local things in here, which makes me all warm and fuzzy inside to see.
So, coming back to my motto then, delivering what you promise. I think we've all been there out clubbing. On our way back, we stop at that local burger place, and you see that advert, the big, juicy burger filled with nice ingredients, and yeah, just looks so, it's your craving for it. You buy it, open it up, doesn't really look like the advert. Take a bite or two, doesn't taste that's what it looked like. So those expectations is totally then wrong for me as a customer. And I think it's the same for employer branding and employer value proposition. You need to deliver what you promise, otherwise employees will not stay long. So mind the gap, don't stretch an EVP too much. So thank you for listening, and we'll leave you with that.